Very welcome to Erik Penser Bank. My name is Claes Brodin and I'm a life science analyst at the bank. Today I have the privilege to interview the CEO of Initiator Pharma, Klaus Elsborg Olsen. Very welcome, Klaus.
Thank you very much, Claes.
Maybe you could start off with a short introduction of Initiator Pharma.
So Initiator Pharma is a clinical stage pharmaceutical company focused on development of safe and effective treatments for a range of disorders and diseases. We are focused on indications where we can provide relief to the patients by safely modulating the neurotransmitter monoamine levels in the central nervous system. This can be pain, sexual function, depression, and other indications where monoamine plays a really important role.
And what's your long-term strategy for Initiator Pharma? What are you striving to become when you're looking at like 5 to 10 years ahead?
In 5 to 10 years, Initiator Pharma will have advanced minimum one of our drug candidates into market approval and market launch, either by ourselves or in collaboration with a partner to taking it into the commercial stage. In parallel to this, we'll have actually advanced our pipeline of clinical assets. We'll have taken into meaningful clinical endpoints, showing efficacy with these assets in selected indications. We'll continue to develop the organization, Initiator Pharma, the people behind it, so we can match, the development of the pipeline that we have. But also in the case that we will still have very much be focused on a cost-effective development of Initiator Pharma. So we make sure that the majority of the proceeds that we have and are getting in will actually be used on maximizing value in the clinic by generating, good proven results that will help us create more value both to the patients but also to the shareholders.
Mm-hmm. And if you perhaps could dive a little bit deeper into your projects, then you added a new program earlier this year, IPTN 2021. Should we start with that one, and you perhaps could describe what you are doing?
So the newest addition is the IPTN21 trial. This is actually based on the same drug candidate that we're using in the IPET 2015 trial. So the IP 2015 drug candidate actually comes with a very strong preclinical package in pain. It's actually pain that is relief that's on par with current treatments. But now with all the clinical work we have done in erectile dysfunction, we can see that this drug candidate also, besides the pain profile and the ED profile, is actually very safe and tolerable. And this allows us actually to develop a new pain relief candidate. So actually we go in, we know that again, the pathways that are relieving for pain is validated. We can know they work. And now we also have a safe and tolerable drug, which is something a lot of the existing pain molecules do not have in the market today. So you can say there's not only a biological scientific rationale for going into this with 2015, but there's also a commercial one going in to what we think is a really good match for IP 2015. That's the trigeminal neuralgia and orphan drug indications, where there's limited therapies available and the pipeline is very sparse. So we actually see by going into trigeminal neuralgia, our candidate IP 2015, we're actually creating benefit for the patients by providing new relief and also creating value to the shareholders of Initiator Pharma.
Okay, if we're looking at the pathway towards regulatory approval for this compound, if you could perhaps give us an indication of what you believe will be needed to take this to an approval and also the timelines.
So one of the advantages of going into trigeminal neuralgia is, of course, that it's an orphan drug indication. So we can actually have an accelerated development plan for this. So we can get into an approval and into the market earlier than with a conventional drug. We foresee the best way to do this is actually taking our drug, going into a healthy volunteer study with 24 patients, where we're going to do multiple things. We're going to give it in 4 different arms. So all patients will receive 4 different treatments. They will get placebo, they will get 1 or 2 different doses of our compound IP 2015, and then we'll also include pregabalin, an existing pain drug, for benchmarking purposes. By doing this, we'll actually do it in a healthy volunteer study where we'll induce pain in the patients, and then we'll do a test battery of various pain tests to see the relief of our drug candidate. This way, we will learn a lot what we call PK/PD relationships. So actually, you can say the kinetics of the drug that we are giving, and also how it's actually working on the pain. This is actually really important data that we will generate into a package, so we know how should we actually look at the next step. How should we conduct a phase 2 clinical trial in trigeminal neuralgia patients? Before we can start the trigeminal neuralgia patients study, we need to complete a MAD study, so a multiple ascending safety study. And we are working on developing a new drug product for that, still based on the IP 2015 compound, but also doing some optimizations on the formulation. And these final formulations will depend on what the results are from the healthy subject study in proof of principle pain trial in a phase 1 trial conducted later this year, or set out to start later this year. So subsequent to the MAD study, we can actually start looking into the patient study in trigeminal neuralgia. Here we are at this point contemplating doing a study of 20 patients, so a double crossover study. So we'll have 20 patients in with trigeminal neuralgia. We'll have them both receiving placebo for 2 weeks and active for 2 weeks. And the benefit of that is that doing them in a crossover study, there will be their own, you can say, their own control benchmark. And this will actually increase the strength of the study. And the reason why we can do such a short study is because of the efficacy of our compound. We do not expect that we need to dose for multiple weeks before we see an effect. We expect that as soon as we get to steady state with the compound, we'll start seeing pain relief. This is something that we are still debating, because one thing that is also an opportunity is to do a phase 2-3 trial, again with the regulatory authorities, if they support this, so we can go even faster to a pivotal trial, so for market registration. When we have completed the first part of the proof of principle in healthy volunteers, we'll assess the drug candidate, how we see that it is going forward, and then we'll continue our interaction with the regulatory authorities, making sure that we do the best possible trial with the most strength, but also make sure we do it in the shortest time possible, so we can provide relief to patients and value to shareholders.
Mm-hmm. And looking at the current standard of care in trigeminal neuralgia, I mean, how do you see your compound? Would it be an add-on to that to the existing therapies, or do you believe it will perhaps become the new standard of care?
So right now, the standard of care in trigeminal neuralgia is kind of limited, as I mentioned before. There's only one approved pharmacological treatment, and that's carbamazepine. It's an old anticonvulsant that has been also been used with different effects in trigeminal neuralgia. For some patients, it works somewhat, but there's a decline of the efficacy over time. We can also see this by people taking carbamazepine are using a lot of other drugs trying to get pain relief. In addition to that, you can have an invasive procedure, so you can do a surgery, but we also see there's a relapse of the pain in these patients, and it's not always on par with the side effects from the surgery. So we see that there's definitely a good need for a new effective treatment that is not only effective, but that's also very safe and tolerable for the patient. So you can say right now, what else is in the pipeline? In the pipeline, we also see there's a few compounds coming up. Biogen have a study where they didn't meet their clinical primary endpoints in their phase 2. They have prepared for phase 3 for a long time, have not started it yet. That's with a different modality than ours. We also know that there's another compound that is taking forward. Biohaven is taking a compound forward. They're conducting a phase 2 trial right now, and it's going to read out later this year, beginning of next year. And we'll see, so there's a drug that's already been approved for migraine, so they're kind of finding a second indication for that. But we believe with the modality that we have, we are bringing something new into the pipeline. We're bringing something that, again, we know it's an effective treatment of pain, and it's also, again, a very safe and tolerable compound. So we see ourselves in a good position here compared to the competition.
Sounds very exciting, everything about IPT 2021. But I would like to jump to your other more advanced assets, and IP 2015 and IP 2018, which is under development for erectile dysfunction. Maybe you can elaborate a little bit why erectile dysfunction is an interesting indication to pursue.
So erectile dysfunction is a really interesting indication for a number of reasons. First of all, it's actually a huge indication. We know that more than 300 million men are suffering from erectile dysfunction. And that number is probably underrepresented by a lot of patients who do not want to go to the doctor with these problems. And we also know that it's an indication where people are willing to take pharmaceutical products to get relief, both for their own benefits, but also for the benefit of their partners. We also know that a lot of these patients do not respond to the current treatment. 30-40% do not respond or only partially respond or have significant side effects of the current drugs in the market, where the majority of the users are using what we call the PD-5 inhibitor products. So what we are doing in Initiator Pharma, we're looking in to treat patients that do not respond to the existing treatment. So the 30-40% that do not get adequate relief from the current treatment, those are the ones we are looking. And that's a very different patient group than you can say the responders. And with our drug candidate, we can actually go in and target specific these patients and provide relief to them.
Mm-hmm. And you have started recruitment for the phase 2b trial. Maybe you could describe what you will, what's the difference compared to the 2a trial and also the timelines, because it's very important to know when we could get the top line results.
So we are really excited starting recruiting patients into our phase 2b trial. So this is a 120 patient trial, and it's an intercourse trial. So you can say that the primary endpoint, besides safety and tolerability, is actually a questionnaire, the EEIF score, where we can go in and with a range of questionnaires, we're actually going to ask the patients of how the intercourse performed. So you can say, again, this is not only focused on erection, it's also focused on how was your feeling, how was your sensitization before and afterwards, and do you feel more aroused? Do you reach a climax during your sexual intercourse and so on? So there's many things more than just the erection. This is the big difference towards the trial that we did previously, the phase 2a trial. Here we looked at what was the effect on the erection upon administration of our drug. And also, this was not an intercourse study. This, again, was a study where the patient was mounted with the Registran apparatus that can measure erection. They were giving either placebo or our drug candidate, IP2015, and then they were exposed to an erotic movie. And then we measured the erection in these patients. Of course, this is something that was conducted in the clinic. It was in a dark room with a video screen. It was male nurses helping you getting ready for this and administering the drug. And of course, this can provide a lot of anxiety and you can say also a little bit of maybe expectation of having to perform that has negative effect on the erection response in general. So we believe that in the phase 2b intercourse study, where people will be administered our drug and actually have the opportunity to then have an intercourse with their partner, will significantly strengthen the value and the outcome of the trial. We therefore see that this is a true natural cause of erection, being stimulated, maybe leading into an intercourse. So we believe that response rate will be better in this one, but it will also be more representative of that it's not only the erection that is important. It also is, are you able to penetrate? Are you able to continue throughout the intercourse? And how is the feeling before, during, and after the intercourse are key parameters. And these parameters are actually everything that it goes into a later registration trial. So all these, this questionnaire, the EEIF score, is actually the questionnaire, the primary endpoint in a registration trial in erectile dysfunction.
Mm-hmm. That sounds very good. You have had some delays for your other compound in ED, IP2018, due to COVID-19. Maybe you could just update us on where you stand in the clinical trial program.
So as we have announced to the market earlier, we are having a delay in recruiting patients in for the IP2018 trial. So this is the trial for psychogenic erectile dysfunction. England has been significantly impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. And of course, this has also played into our recruitment of patients coming into this trial. So again, here we're looking at patients that suffer both from depression and erectile dysfunction. And they have suffered significantly under this pandemic, not being able to go out and meet people in general. So we have made some modifications of the inclusion criteria that has actually helped our recruitment. And when we have a better view, visibility of the timelines, we will come back to the market and report that. But we are still on good track, and we have high hopes for this candidate. IP 2018 had really strong preclinical data, and with the pathway already validated in the IP 2015 trial, we think this will also be the case in the IP 2018 trial.
Okay, great. I mean, you have quite recently finalized the last step in a financing, and quite comprehensive financing. And maybe you can just update us. Where does the financing take you, and both in time and where you will expect to be in the programs?
We are super excited with the closing of the recent financing. The financing was split in two parts, and the first part with the direct, we actually were able to land significant investors to bring them into the shareholder book of Initiator Pharma. We got on board Link AB, and we got Inadrigo, specialist investors, small institutional investors, among others, and they are really, a significant confidence boost to what we are doing is on the right track. In addition to that, the preferential rights issue was actually oversubscribed significantly by the existing shareholders. And we are very happy that, we both got to take in new cornerstone investors into the company while we still maintain the good, proportion of retail investors that we have that has supported us throughout the development of both the IP 2015 and IP 2018. So with the recent financing that we got in, we actually covered the development of the company and our operation well into 2023. The majority of the proceeds from this would actually go into the new pain program. And that is the program where we start out doing the healthy volunteer study. So we will start that, as I mentioned earlier, and then we will follow up with the MAD study in the phase 1 MAD study, multiple ascending dose. And we'll also use some of the proceeds actually to develop a drug product based on the IP 2015 drug. So it actually could potentially be the drug that we could launch at the end of a pivotal trial. The money will also go in to cover the continued operation of the company, but both the ED 2015 and the IP 2018 trial is already financed previously. So the IP 2015 trial was financed at the partnership together with MAC Clinical Research in the UK, and the 2018 has been financed by the previous round fundraisings. So actually, this is a super exciting time for us. We know we have now an outlook in milestones that we can actually deliver multiple clinical value inflection points in the coming months.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. And to sum this up, what will be the most important news flow from Initiator Pharma in the next 12 to 18 months?
No, we actually look forward very much to some exciting times coming up. The next 12 to 18 months will be super exciting for Initiator Pharma. There will be reaching a lot of true value inflection points. And right now, I'm looking forward to start dosing the first patients in the phase 2B trial for IPET 2015. So that's the 120 patient trial that will finish, set to finish at the end of next year. And we're looking very much forward to getting that started. Then we also have the IP 2018, the phase 2 trial will be concluded, and we will get the results coming out of that. And then we will also continue working on the pain study in healthy volunteers. So our ambition is to file the application in the fall, so we can actually start clinical trials shortly after that and actually get the data out of that. That's a fairly short trial because it's healthy volunteers. We can do multiple healthy subjects at the same time. And with these results, we can actually start running on the MAD study. So I think there's a lot of interesting things going to happen for us. And also in continuum of that, this is our existing clinical programs. We are also looking at our discovery assets, so the preclinical assets, and seeing if we can find good utility for these compounds. And we've been working this for some time, but I think we are getting closer and closer actually to identifying good potential development pathways for these candidates as well.
Very interesting, and thank you so much for the interview, Klaus.
And thank you for having me, Claes, and all the questions.